G'day students and welcome to our Thursday class of this week. Obviously filming these two back to back and hoping that all has progressed well from Monday's class and that you enjoyed your alternative program of yesterday, which was Wednesday. So today, as I continue on with delivering to you some information that you may or may not have picked up on throughout last week's research task, I ask you to continue either doing one of two things. Have those notes in front of you that you've been creating, whether it be on Microsoft Word or in your exercise book, throughout this online learning phase, and either continue to add to those or go back and access for me the Microsoft Word 2-table 7-page document that you worked on last week about those lifespan stages and also the development into 4 different categories, and either confirm your understandings or add to it. As I said, this is going to be very important not only for the outcome task next week, but also for the SAC in the final week of term. So I'm just going to flip over right now and I'm going to show you something that I've found. Actually, I won't start with that one. My apologies. I'll start with this one here. And I'm just picking and choosing some different slides from here to talk through with you and have you add to your notes. So we finished at 12 years old last time. And what I'm going to do now is go through the youth phase, which is 12 to 18 years of age. Now, there's major changes that take place, but they're not as rapid as when we were talking about that infancy of really learning sight, sound, taste, touch, etc. It's a little bit different in terms of there's one big change that is taking place during this youth, 12 to 18 years, but that one big change is a major change. It's in the physical development area and it's around puberty. So it's talking about people's size and shape and their body structure. So in the physical development area, there is a rapid growth spurt. So while the age of 6 to 12 was consistent growth, there is a rapid growth spurt at the start of the 12 to 18 years. Now, for females, it can happen a bit earlier than males on general, and it can happen at different rates for different people, but most likely puberty has massive spurts of growth. There's physical appearance change. So sometimes different sexual characteristics can lead to a full appearance change in somebody, more mature. Size of muscles, bones, organs, and the reproductive organs will grow, and also the fine and gross motor skills become well defined. So a reminder to you, and you should have done this through year 7 and year 8 health, but the sex organs will enlarge. For females, the ovaries and uterus allows for menstruation to occur. There's the taller aspect in growth, also wider at the hips, preparing for potential childbirth, breast development, which can continue. Body hair in both the pubic and underarm and leg regions. There is a slight voice change in females, not as much as in males, but different weight spurts begin because of the hormones that are being released. In terms of males, the same with enlargement and development of sex organs. So the testes will grow, the penis will lengthen, the scrotum enlarges, etc. And also the potential indicator of first ejaculation and seminal fluid will begin to happen at this stage. Remember, we talk about wet dreams and all of those aspects. So secondary changes is also growing taller, shoulders getting wider, hair again, and that also includes facial hair, and it's a much more coarse growth of hair, meaning thicker and rougher. And then what we're doing is we're talking about that voice change, which is also a physical change there. So in terms of the emotional development, there can be some real instability in terms of emotional phases during this 12 to 18 years. So feelings and moods and expressing themselves, they do begin to gain control closer to 18 years of age, but mood swings and also hyper mood, meaning that mood will change rapidly, and it will also sort of go from one end of the spectrum to the other really quickly, will take place. So different triggers can be really critical in terms of the emotional development here, and also support from family and friends to show that it's okay to feel the way you're feeling. In terms of social development, it becomes more complex. And I know I mentioned that in the last presentation on Monday, but as you're dealing with people from different age groups now, not just similar gender and similar age, but you're also dealing with people from opposite sexes. You're also dealing with maybe younger brothers and sisters or cousins and family, as well as older brothers and sisters, as well as starting to interact a bit more with people in different year levels at your school and also in your social context, whether it be a basketball group, a soccer group, or a youth club. Whoever it is that you're dealing with comes from a range of different age groups. So starting to learn the complexity of how to deal with different types of relationships becomes difficult in this phase, but it's a learning curve. There's also a growth in terms of independence from parents and also the start of how to manage and develop romantic relationships. Excuse me. So in terms of intellectual development, the ability to think and the ability to reason by asking questions and dealing with more complex skills is growing during the 12 to 18 years. And the closer that young people get to 18 years, the easier they find these cognitive skills. Also, being able to distinguish between reality and fantasy and being able to think about their future in terms of what's realistic and what isn't grows each and every year within this phase. So I might actually leave it there in terms of youth. What I really want people to understand is that when it comes to youth and when it comes to the development in these four areas, a lot of it is around puberty. It all grows through the schooling phase, and a lot of it is around the growth and the change in the different relationship structures. There are some complexities and there are some eases, and depending on different socio-cultural contexts, it can also be an easier phase or a harder phase for each individual. So it's hard to categorize and say this is an easy phase, this is a consistent phase, etc. Because for some people who are in poorly established countries who have low SES and low access to different maybe mental health situational helpers, and also might have influenced things through what they've experienced in their younger life. This can be a really tough phase, and a lot of development can take place from that tough aspect. And for other people who still live with their parents and are sheltered by their parents for safety aspects so that they can focus on other different cognitive development skills like schoolwork and gaining understanding and trust through teachers and friends, it can be a smoother phase than other people. So it's a challenging phase to sort of describe for you. The last thing that I want to go through is a series of slides about adulthood. Now, these in particular are about early adulthood, but I am just going to categorize them and talk about both phases of adulthood as I go through these. So, in terms of physical development, in most respects, most adults will already be at their full height, full proportional limits, healthy, vigorous, energetic, and move through the world. In terms of their physical development, it's stunted, it hasn't changed much, and it's about managing that. Most people are at the peak of their physical condition here. The brain will continue to grow in size and it will reach its maximum in early adulthood, and it's about establishing different connections within that brain to grow understanding. So the senses are as sharp as they'll ever be. It's not increasing, it's not decreasing, and as you get through this age group, that is when some of those things might dwindle off in the older adulthood and into older age. Now, in regards to physical fitness, we all know what we should be doing by this phase because it's learnt through school and through younger year levels and through experiencing. But time is a massive factor in establishing why a lot of people are not in their peak physical fitness. So realistically, we should be in our peak physical fitness in this younger adulthood. However, due to a lot of different aspects, people often are not. What we need to also understand is that not everyone is equal. Now, this is an American study, this one here, But it is also very interesting to note that there's different aspects that we deal with in adulthood that we don't have to deal with in those earlier youth categories. And so we're talking a little bit more about death at this stage. So if you look at the statistics, death is something that is experienced more as we get older and older. And so it is a major stressor, it's a major concern, and it's something that we have to deal with. And so if you look here at different murder rates, this is obviously telling us that while development and growth is not a major aspect during this category, health really is. And it's being physical health, social health, emotional, and intellectual. Because if somebody has developed their intellectual health, they understand the difference between right and wrong and good and evil. If somebody has good social health, then they wouldn't have that aspect of negativity that can potentially lead to a major issue like what we're presenting here. If somebody has full physical development of their brain and their brain has all of its connections, then how can somebody in their right mind come to these conclusions and be able to make very poor decisions that are life affecting for themselves and for other people who are influenced? And also in terms of emotions, if emotions have been fully developed and at this stage stresses are not something that is majorly dealt with, then what can happen is people make smarter choices. I'm just going to flip down to another slide here, and the slide is linked to what I've just presented, and it's all about stress and coping. Now, stress is a response to an event that is either challenging or threatening. However, what we have to understand is that there's actually events and circumstances that are both positive and negative that can deal with stress. So stresses can be pleasant events and unpleasant events. So exams and arguments are obviously unpleasant events that deal with stress, but weddings and winning an award and having to just get up on stage and accept that award, or hoping that all goes well for yourself and for your friends and family that are coming to your wedding as guests, that is also a stressful but pleasant event. And so we look at stress in terms of managing stress in this aspect here. And this is again one theory of how stress is dealt with. So firstly, there's a primary stressor. And so in terms of primary stressor, what we do is we initially look at, oh dear, this is going to cause me a lot of issue, and I start initially stressing. Now, if any positive consequences can come out of this, then we realize this is not a threat. So I've had an initial stress, I've worked it through in my brain, and I'm no longer stressed or threatened by this situation. If I can't work that through, it becomes a secondary appraisal where I might ask someone else, try and cope with it, or try and find some resources to help me cope with it. And if I can find some resources, like a person or a reading or a YouTube or a phone call, I can actually reduce the threat of that stress. However, some people will skip through this stage or not spend enough time in this stage, or can't even see that this stage is a potential exister. Then we move to I am stressed. And this is a stage that we go through all day, every day in the majority of our adult life, and that you guys will start to understand as well as you grow and develop. Now, I know that I mentioned in a previous video that there's not a huge amount of development that does take place in the adulthood. However, one thing that we have to understand is that, again, these are theories, and one of the theories is this one here, and that is that during childhood and adolescence, we acquire skills and abilities and understandings. However, during adulthood, we start to achieve things. As we go through, we gain more responsibilities, and we have to actually be able to execute these different responsibilities through our achievements. And then one thing that can happen here is that people can move in and out of different categories. And so what's really interesting is that there are concepts of continued development. And I think it will make more sense when I show you just a quick diagram here. So when we finish school and we're 17, 18 years old and we're moving into this adulthood phase, most of us will attend a college, a university, a tertiary study, a TAFE. From that, we actually continue to develop our understanding in our brain through the ages of 19, 20, 21, etc. Then we get into, and I know they've said sales here, but a base level job from the learning that we had through college, university, TAFE, etc. And hopefully move into a management job if that is what our aspirations are. And as you can see, with each of these different areas, there's more learning, there's more social aspect. When you are just starting out in this, what they've called sales or at a job, you are dealing with the social management of somebody who is your boss telling you what to do. And then when you move into management, you are dealing with having to tell other people what to do in a way that supports and helps them. So it's a really interesting phase of growth that a lot of people think not much is happening and it's just continuing on through life. But we also need to consider during this stage that because of that sexual maturity, we are able to produce babies and children. And because of our social development earlier on, quite often marriage will take place. And when marriage takes place, it can lead to, a child growing in a family. And when that happens, there are new stresses, new learnings. So how do you remember when you were 0, 1, 2-year old and learning how to walk or feed or anything? Those are all new learnings that need to take place. And the brain might have been fully developed, but it needs to take on new intellectual developments like what you're learning right now and like I had to when I became a father for the first time. So each of these aspects is brand new. I leave you with a task now, which is to consolidate all of the information that you had, whether it be through your notes or whether it be through the table that I provided you last week. And now that I've been through all of these aspects, ensuring that you have the best possible updated notes is the challenge for this week. No need to submit unless you'd like me to relook at it, same as Monday's class, because we will be using this table to help us with outcome task 3. It will be an open book style of learning and you will be submitting it across multiple lessons like we've done in the past to be as fair with this remote and flexible learning as possible. Good luck and feel free to ask me any questions that you need.